Going on, everybody? We're back. Episode number 211 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight we're talking UFC 313, big pay-per-view. We got Shama, Alex Pereira. He is taking on Magomed Ankalaev. Feels like a matchup we've been waiting for some time, and it's finally materializing here. So we're going to see who wins it out. As usual, we got me, Adam May Fox, Danny at Danny_Lags. You can find us both at Twitter on those handles. Guys, drop a like, subscribe if you like the show. We'd appreciate it. And as always, we're brought to you guys by FightNumbers.com. They're the home of the trends tool that John Kelly created himself. It's pretty awesome to identify signal and noise. The home of John Kelly's DFS projections, which are some of the best in the business, bets from Pepe and Azie, and the live odds screen. Also, if you join, you get access to their Discord, and that means getting to chat with everybody associated with Fight Numbers themselves. So check it out, guys. And for 30% off your first month subscription there, use a promo code CLUB, CLUB. That'll help us out as well. And yeah, we are coming at you after a meh card last night, but we'll discuss it briefly. I had a pretty fucking aggravating night. I did like a slight up after live, but like my pre-bets were just so tilting. I was down like 0.7 units on it. I had goes distance and Temerov Charles Johnson at minus 162 to win a unit. That worked out. And yeah, I'm back in my house. In my new house. Which was fine. I mean, no one really got near finished. I thought it was kind of absurd. I probably should have bet it bigger, to be honest. I thought it was kind of absurd that two guys who had never been finished in their careers, who were also flyweights, were minus 162 to go the distance. Unfortunately, the other total I bet was the over 1.5 in Austin Lane and Mario Pinto. I'm not sure it was great to begin with, since they were kind of swinging at each other in the first round too. But like round two, I'm like, okay, we've settled in here. This is going to go good. Lane kind of hurts into the body and then just goes crazy and gets himself knocked out. And just like, fuck me, man. So I lost 1.71 units there. I had 0.6 units on Ricardo Ramos. He lost. I had plus 330 there. Wasn't really entirely surprising, but yeah, he didn't really give it much of an effort. I had 3.64 units on William Gomes, minus 182. That one really, really stung. And I don't think it was a good bet. I think Emil was definitely the side. I thought Gomes would have a much easier time avoiding him, and Emil would have a harder time cutting off the cage. I felt like Emil choosing to catch kicks there to try to convert them into takedowns deterred a lot of Gomez's kicking game, which obviously it's a fairly integral part of his game, and it was pretty smart. But yeah, I mean, it was a close fight. I thought it could have gone either way. It went to a split decision, but not a great bet and a real bummer because it was a huge swing for me on the night. I had a unit on Nasrat Hakparas plus 225. Fight kind of went how I thought it would. You know, it was a close, competitive fight. I thought Nasrat would be able to land the left at will. I thought Rebo volume could be a problem. I was a bit surprised, and I'm curious your take here, Legs, of like how many people said they thought Rebo won. Like Sean and I were on Narco Stream, and we were both hammering Nasrat live in round 3. Like I thought he was clearly up 2-0. But I guess that wasn't really the general view of it. What did you think?
I told you earlier before the pod started, though, I didn't get a chance to see a lot of the fights. So
right.
That one in particular was not one of the ones I got a chance to see. So
yeah, I just felt like, you know, by far the most substantive shots in the first 2 rounds came from Nasrat, and he bloodied him up pretty badly. But yeah, I mean, it was a banger fight. And then I had 4.14 units on Manel Kopp, minus 207. Obviously, some ugly fouls there. Ahead of the end of that fight, but I mean, Asu didn't really have a chance. He went to go for 8 on takedowns. He was overwhelmed standing. I mean, the true price is probably like minus 500. So yeah, it was a small loss on pre-bets. Bit of a bummer, but is what it is. You know, we move on to I'm gonna have a bunch of bets on this card. So how'd you do last night though, Danny?
Well, follow up on that. I'm probably gonna have a ton of bets on this card as well. I think it's just like an interesting card, and again, ton of great spots, top to bottom. But not slight profit for me. Only had 2 plays on the night and finished plus 0.35 units. So I had the Almeida Silva fight, the under 2.5 rounds at minus 110 to win 1.5 units. So lost that. But then I so I had a parlay to win 2 units with the Sam Patterson under 2.5 rounds, and then the Marquez fight to not start round 3.
Oh, that was easy.
That was minus 113. That was minus 113. Yeah. So slight profit there.
But yeah, so we'll pop into it for this week. This is a banger card. I've got 2 bets so far. I'm going to make a handful of others, and we'll talk about them as we go through here. First fight of the night, though, Lags. I'm going to kick it to you. We only have 11 fights also so far. I feel like they've got to add a fight or two, right? For a pay-per-view, I would imagine we're getting at least 1 or 2 more fights before the end of this. So we'll see. But first fight, race.
Well, I was just say real quick. I think there was some rumor that I don't know if it was Rebecca was like flown stateside just in case, like, so they might have a fight for him.
I'd be cool with it. I'd like to get 12. It kind of sucks doing like 11, but especially if we lose a couple like we did this week, it just ended up being a total mess. But yeah, first fight of the night, we got Seruya. He's taking on Joshua Van. Obviously, 2 pretty highly touted prospects here. Van has done pretty well in the UFC. Seruya 1-0. Current price, Van -200. Come back on, or -190. Come back on Seruya +165. What do you think, Danny?
Great scrap to start the pay-per-view card. For starters, like you mentioned, 2 high-level prospects. I lean more on the Seruya side. Like if I had to actually make a bet here, just because I think he can have grappling success here against Van. I know we kind of see that is his big deficiency, but I feel like he is going to struggle a lot on the back end of this fight. Like he's not super physical. His striking is, all it means just to get to the grappling. Really, it's not really much to speak of at all.
Yeah.
So I think Seruya can make it competitive in spots, but ultimately, I think Van probably shucks off a decent bit of the grappling.
Yeah, I have similar feelings. It's an interesting fight because obviously Cody Durden had a fair amount of success in round 1 against Van in his last fight. I think grappling is still the weak point of Josh Van's game. But having said that, it seems also fairly clear to me and probably unsurprising given his age that Van's making fairly substantial improvements fight to fight, especially in the grappling. Like I bet Durden in that fight, and I expected Durden to be able to convert takedowns into back takes, and Van did a really, really good job not giving his back up in that fight, working up along the fence, and then cooking Durden as he got tired. I agree with you. Seruya is a bit different because it's very, very unconventional. He's a very good wrestler, and the way he attacks, positions, it's just not stuff you see every day. And so I think he can put Van in a fair amount of trouble early in this fight. I wouldn't even be shocked if he subbed Van early. He obviously almost got Carlos Hernandez in a twister in his last fight. But to your point, I do agree. And I think Van is much less of like Carlos Hernandez is a bit of a noodle, for lack of a better word. Most guys who want to get him down do. I don't think it's going to be that easy with Van. Obviously, he's a good athlete, pretty stocky, clearly improved his takedown defense, and showing a decent ability to get up against the fence. I do think Seruya is going to have a lot of success early, and I'd actually favor him outright in round 1. But I mean, given how much Seruya slowed down against Climaco and how hard he slowed down in his first fight against Carlos Hernandez, I feel like any faltering here will be pretty bad news for him against a guy like Van. Dravi said in the chat, the Van 2-3 KO. You just mentioned it, Lags. Like I do think as the takedowns stop coming easy, I think Van's probably going to start to cook him. I think we all know how this inevitably ends with a bunch of people on Twitter holding 2-3 Van tickets and being angry when it goes to a 29-28 tilting decision with Seruya running for his life in round 3. I feel like that's already written in the stars. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if -200 Van is right or not. I am not as high on Seruya as the market is in general, though. I'm not tempted by Van. I think Seruya could give him some issues early, but Van's the better fighter. He's more tested. He's the better athlete. He's got better cardio, and he's going to rip the body hard in this fight. So I would say, if anything, I'm kind of hoping, because I see the over is, let me just pull it up real quick.
It's huge chalk. It's like -2.
Yeah, so it's -210. So, and given that Van's almost -200,
15, I think. To you.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking Van or Seruya sub-1 could be a huge price, and that is something that kind of interests me. Not that I expect it to be happening, but I think that's where his biggest equity is in this fight, So like if we got like a 15-1, 20-1 Seruya sub-1, I'd take a poke at that, but otherwise I'm pretty happy to pass this. Moving on, we got Curtis Blades. He's taking on Rizvan Kuniev. Current price, Blades -310. Comeback on Kuniev +260. I thought I'd laid the chalk here on Blades pre-fight personally, but I taped it today and I'm a lot less enthusiastic than I was about it pre-tape. Blades is better. He's fought better competition. He's the much, much better athlete. He's stronger. He comes from the better wrestling background. But, man, Curtis Blades is kind of easy to take down, if we're being honest. Like, I think Kuniev can get takedowns here if he wants him. Can he control Blades? I'm pretty doubtful of that, given how much Jaylen struggled to control him on the mat. But even on the feet, man, Curtis is more dangerous in my opinion, which is why I think it makes sense for him to be the favorite. Like, faster hands, more power, better kicks. But I'm not sure he's got a big technical edge on Kuniev. He's probably got a power edge, but I don't know. It's the kind of fight that I don't want to say it profiles as the kind of fight Curtis would fumble, because it doesn't. It profiles as the kind of fight Curtis would smash in, taking a step out in competition against a guy without big power. But I feel like I feel like Blades, if he's not grapple fucking, doesn't tend to separate that hard from his opponents. And I don't think he's going to be dominating the grappling here. If anything, I kind of think he'll be getting taken down. And in a fight where like the biggest portion of Blades' upside is striking, I don't know that I can get behind him minus 300, especially when I don't think he's got a huge technical edge. I'm not super tempted on Kuniev because I am a Curtis Blades guy, but what do you think?
I guess to your point, I don't know if I would lay the juice on Blades, but I more or less think it's fine. Like, I guess to your point in the wrestling,
he should win, yeah.
Right. I guess to your point in the wrestling, I think Blades can have success in the wrestling, but he's probably round one for him is probably going to be sketchy. Like, I think Kuniev's probably can get him down early. He definitely seems like a hoss early on, but his cardio doesn't seem good at all. Like, back end of this fight, again, Blades going to have much better cardio. I think he's a much better wrestler. About the technical striking, I think he is the more technical striker on the feet. I think power is probably commensurate. I think Blades is huge. Fine with me.
I guess the point I'm sorry, I probably gave too bearish of a take there, and I'll say this because when I first saw the line, I was like, I'm gonna have 10 units on Curtis Blades here. He's gonna wreck this guy. He should be minus 1,000 was what went through my head, and taping it back, I was like, I can see how it could play out competitively. I agree with you. Blades is the better fighter. It's just I have zero desire to lay the minus 300 on Curtis Blades after looking at it. He should win. I agree. He should be the better fighter, but
what's the total after this one?
That's actually a great question. I actually think it is 2.5, if I'm not mistaken. I was looking at it a bit earlier. Over 2.5 is plus 120. It's minus 150 to the under. Actually, the under might be a decent look. Kuniev's a lot of his fights end, although it's usually if he's dominating grappling. So I don't know. Moving on though. Curious your take here. I have a semi-passionate take, but we got Myron Santos. He's taking on Francis Marshall. Current price Santos minus 350. The comeback on Marshall plus 285. What are your thoughts? Francis Marshall live here?
I wouldn't say I have a passionate take. I know you like the dog here, and I do think Marshall's live to a degree. Santos, again, talking about Van first fight of the night, that really is his big deficiency, is his defensive grappling. But you see, again, he's pretty raw. He's at Extreme Couture. Definitely seems to be improving in his takedown defense. I just don't think Marshall's a great wrestler, personally. I think Santos' first level takedown defense is pretty solid. Much better striker here. Huge power. Can probably find a finish, I think, too.
Yeah, I do like the Marshall side here, and I'll eventually have a bet. I'm not uber passionate about it, but Myron Santos obviously is a very talented prospect. I'm actually quite high on him and his trajectory for the long term. Dangerous counterpuncher, very fast, a lot of power for the division. Very good athlete, all things you like to see. I think he's got a semi-large grappling deficiency, though. The one thing that's kind of holding me back here, and if anybody in the chat can find this fight, please hit me up with it, because I haven't been able to get it to load. His tough fight with pulling his name up now, Edwin Cooper, I have not been able to get to load on ESPN. So I have heard he got wrestled in it. I didn't see that fight. But I'll say this, you go back and watch this guy's fight with Dan Argueta a few years back, and he looked like a complete fish out of water, once grounded. And that was
John, I can send you that fight. He gets grounded in that first round.
Yeah. So, well, I have the. Did you get to watch through ESPN? Because it would not load for me. I could not get the link to load on ESPN.
No.
It's I have the link. Okay, interesting. I'll try again later. But look, I'm sure he's made big improvements since then. But what bothered me about the Argueta fight is it's just like I agree with you. He's got decent first level takedown defense. Like he does an okay job of digging unders on initial shots, but he doesn't really know what to do past that. Like he's not good at repummeling in the clinch. Once he's taken down, he makes almost no effort to get height. Like he keeps going for hip escapes, and I like using a hip escape as a way to get up, but you got to create space with it. And he just didn't really seem to have any clue at all. And Argueta just ran him over. Now, keep in mind, that fight was at 135 pounds. It was a couple years ago. I'm quite sure he's made improvements. But now he's up at 145, and he's taken on a guy in Francis Marshall who's had fights at lightweight. And Francis Marshall's a cardio demon who's pretty strong himself. And if these guys strike, Pepe just said in the chat, Myron Santos is a lot like Nicholas Mota. And like that actually it actually is a similar dynamic to me. But like if these guys like strike, yeah, I favor Santos a lot. Marshall, I don't like his striking, but I do like how proactive he is. He comes forward, he throws a lot of volume. But like Santos is going to land big counters. He's faster, he's more accurate, he's got more power. He's going to probably counter him hard. But I think even though I don't rate Marshall's wrestling a ton, like I kind of agree with you, Legs. I feel like he might be a lot stronger than Santos is. Like he is a pretty like thick dude. Close. Yeah, and he's a guy who's been grappling his entire life. Dennis Bazooka, he won the first round with him grappling, and I'm pretty confident saying I think Dennis Bazooka is a better counter grappler than Myron Santos is. I can just, and I go back and I watch, and I know he put out an awful performance against William Gomes, but like you look at round 3 against William Gomes, when Marshall, the only time in that fight, he actively pursued the grappling, and he absolutely mauled him. And like, in my opinion, William Gomes is a much, much, much better defensive grappler than Myron Santos is. So I think about that, and I'm like, man, it's not really that hard to picture Francis Marshall going forward, getting his hands on him, getting him down, and just dominating. Like he's a Kurt Pellegrino black belt. He's in his first camp at ATT, as Pepe just said in the chat. He's got great cardio. He's very, very tough. I think Santos is a good prospect, but like he's even from a market standpoint, he's got bigger favorite here than he was against Khan Ofli, who is an awful athlete and is not a UFC level fighter. So yeah, I mean, I think the line is pretty wide here. I'll eventually be on Marshall. So we'll see what happens. I'm not sure where Lags just went, so I'll just keep running with it here. We got Alex Morono. He's taken on Carlos Leal. Current price, Leal is a large favorite. He is minus 700. The comeback on Morono, plus 500. It's kind of annoying because, 2 to 3 years ago, I'd have bet Morono for a sizable amount in this spot at this price. But 2 to 3 years ago, he wouldn't have been this price, if we're being honest. The truth is, I think the jury is not out. The jury is in on Alex Morono, and they are saying he is finished. I have been a fan of Alex Morono for the majority of his career. He's a guy who's been consistently underrated because he's not a great athlete, and the market has treated him as such, even though he's been a pretty quality fighter. But you look at his last 3 fights, his durability is clearly going. His cardio, which was always a huge strength of his, is gone. He doesn't seem like he's full-time training anymore. He doesn't seem like he can take shots as well as he once could. He was never the best wrestler to begin with, but now it seems like his wrestling is just totally gone. So yeah, I mean, Alex Morono is a shell of himself, in my opinion. And he's got Carlos Leal here. And frankly, I don't really like Carlos Leal that much. I bet him against Renat, which was brutal. But I don't think he's that good of a fighter. He's very, very easy to hit. If you have good footwork, he's pretty easy to outmaneuver. I don't think he's a very good defensive grappler, but I don't think he's that dangerous as an offensive grappler. But he's a powerhouse. The guy is on, we'll talk about this fight in a bit. But, when I was taping Bruno Pereira and he's fighting Abus Magomedov, and DC kind of pokes fun at Felder, implying, he was on the sauce, saying that Felder's back used to look like Carlos Leal's. Take that for what you want to take it. But the guy's back is jacked to the nines with covered with acne. He's on all the good medicine here. He hits really hard. His cardio seems endless these days. Yeah, I mean, I think he just got way too much firepower for this version of Morono. Having said that, I wouldn't be overly shocked if Morono was able to like win round one just on basically intelligence, movement, and grit. I'd still expect Morono to be able to put out decent round ones. And like I said, I think especially in a big cage, you can outmaneuver Leal. And at their peaks, I would have favored at Morono's peak, I would have favored him against Leal. So I think Leal is just way too much athlete and way too much horsepower for this version of Morono. But like, I wouldn't be shocked if Morono keeps it a bit like surprisingly close early. And if that's the case, Leal live might be a decent look. But like, I don't see anything on the total that interests me. I see nothing on the money line that interests me. How about you, Lex?
I was going to say it was probably a good time for me to have technical difficulties because I don't think there's much to say on this fight specifically. I think it's probably an easy fight for Leal in all totality. I think he probably does finish Morono, though. To your point about the durability, hasn't really looked that great for Alex as of late. Cardio doesn't look great as of late. I think there's just a lot going against him intangibility-wise.
Yep, agree. Moving on, we got Azie Diaz. He's taking on Jordan Santos. Diaz making his second fight in the UFC, coming back from being KO'd brutally by the big Chinese fella. Cannot remember his name. That's why I referred to him as that. And yes. And he's taking out Jordan Santos, who's coming off of cashing a big plus 350 ticket for me on Contender Series against Will Curry. Current price, Santos minus 180. Comeback on Diaz, plus 155. What are your thoughts here, Lex?
This is a shit show, to be honest with you. Like, it seems like a LFA fight, to be honest. Like, it seems really low level. I have some interest in the under. I think the under 2.5 is around like that minus 140 range. I think both of these guys lack defense. Both of these guys come forward, throw hard. I mean, I get Ribeiro being favored, just the grappling upside, I guess, but it's a mess, really.
Yeah, I was like 100% positive I was going to bet Azie Diaz for a decent amount when I saw the line. And then I went to tape it today. And like, I'm taping Ribeiro and I'm like, man, yeah, he's not that good. Like I don't understand this line.
Right.
And then you go back and you tape Azie Diaz and it's like,
fuck, it's awful. It's awful.
Just not good. Dude, he's slow. He's chinny. Yeah. I literally got through 2 fights and then started the Chuck Campbell fight and I watched 3 minutes of it and I was like, yep, nope, not betting this fight. I am good with passing. He's just slow. He's wooden. He's chinny. I don't think he's a great grappler. It wouldn't shock me if the line is wide and he competes or even wins this fight. Obviously, Diaz has a lot of power in his hands. Santos does seem like he can be hit, but Diaz seems very firmly sub-UFC level, whereas Santos seems, I don't really know. Like, I don't put a ton of stock into beating Will Curry. Like, beating Will Curry is just a question of can you stop takedowns? That's really it. But it's like Santos, at least, there's some mystery there in what his upside could be. He seems like a decent athlete. He's in much better shape today than he was, in his regional footage from 3-4 years ago. So we have one firmly UFC guy and a guy who might be firmly UFC, but who's also a lot younger and, at least has some athleticism. I don't have much interest in it. I understand the take on the under, especially because it seems like Diaz really just can't take a flush shot. Oh, wow. MMA Triple J saying they just added a fight. It's Chris Gutierrez and John Castaneda. That's a banger, actually.
Well, I was actually going to say, it's funny he actually mentions that. And we were talking about it in the beginning of the card, they might add another fight. I saw like the tape index had Gutierrez's fights up there, so they were hoping he was going to maybe get a booking, but I didn't think Castaneda was going to be that spot.
I think Gutierrez, if I'm not mistaken, was originally supposed to be on last night's card. He was booked with somebody for it. Yes, that's correct. And then Matsumoto pulled out.
Well, I think, was that for last card or was that supposed to be for this card? Because it looks like it's supposed to be for this card.
Oh, you might be right. Okay, so that's an interesting fight, actually. I don't really have a ton of thoughts on that before having not looked at it, but that's interesting. I mean, that's good. I'll put my tweet thoughts out on it later. But yeah, Pepe said he took Santos minus 165. I don't hate it. I literally texted Pepe this morning, and I'm like, the Azie Diaz price has to be wide, right? He's like, dude, the guy's a bum. And I'm like, I'm taping it for like 20 minutes, and I'm like, yep, not betting this. So yeah, this is kind of it's like It's kind of funny because there's a lot of cool fights in this card, but this one just is like sticks out like a sore thumb as to why. Like at least with like Alex Morono, Carlos Leo, I think we expect a homicide, to happen in that fight. So I at least get it. This one is just weird selection.
Speaking
but
of
moving on. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, no, cut you off real quick. Speaking of weird selection, what are we doing with Blades as the second fight of the night and Seruya first fight of the night? Like, and we have just a weird ass like prelim booking, like just with the level of fights.
Well, also because you would think, because I'm pretty sure for pay-per-views after the early prelims they go to ESPN. So, like, why are you giving us Alex Morono and Carlos Leo and Azie Diaz and Jordan Santos when you've got Joshua Van and Curtis Blades that you could like? Curtis Blades is headlined what 5 fight nights, 6 fight nights, headlined a pay-per-view.
He was just in a title fight. He was just in
and it's a heavyweight fight. Dana loves his heavyweights. It is pretty bizarre. But moving on, we have a very interesting fight here. We got Bruno Ferreira. He's taking on Arman Petrosyan. Current price here, Petrosyan's a favorite. He is -1. Oh, money's coming in. That's kind of annoying. He's -145. The comeback on Ferreira is +125. I've historically been a Petrosyan guy, but I kind of want to take the plus money on Bruno Ferreira here. I understand why he's a favorite. Petrosyan, great volume. He's a very good kickboxer, decent defense, good leg kicks. But my issue with Petrosyan is I don't want to be disrespectful, but in some respects, he's almost like a WMMA fighter. And by that, I mean, he's just kind of like a harmless volume merchant, like he doesn't hurt.
Are you
what?
They call him Chew?
Yeah, yes, that is a great example. He's like Caleb Chikagian. He doesn't hurt people on the feet, like almost ever. He is hurtable himself. He's tall, or no, he's not even long, He has no grappling. He's just basically a volume merchant. And like he's a very good volume merchant. Don't get me wrong, Decent defense, tons of volume, good cardio. Like that's great. But I feel like Arman's upside is always like I bet him as a dog against Shara. I bet him as a dog against Christian Duncan. It's like, okay, I'm getting +140 in striking fights with a guy who's got good defensive striking and throws a lot of volume. I'm happy to do that. But now he's turned around as the favorite here, and he's getting priced the way that Abus Magomedov did last fight against Bruno Ferreira. And I think it's a bit of an overreaction. And I know Ferreira did get finished in that fight, but I look at this and it's like, yeah, I mean, Arman's a better striker. There's no question about it. I think we both agree with that. And I think he's got more reliable volume. But there's a giant difference in hardware here. Like Bruno, his game is ugly, but he makes it work. The guy is pretty explosive. He's probably one of the biggest hitters, if not the biggest hitter at 185. I was looking at this earlier. Believe it or not, his knockdown rate's about 3.1%, which is like very good for like the heavyweight division, not like just like the middleweight division. Like the guy's got absolutely elite power. He's very, very sharp on the counter. And so, like, I feel like in general with Bruno, you're dealing with like a pretty high floor. He can put anybody out. You even saw in the Abus fight, he was having issues with Abus's speed and length, and still almost finished that fight in round 2 and was giving him hell in round 3. And so I feel like Petrosyan's upside against a guy like Bruno is like he's going to outpoint him over 15 minutes, which he might. But it kind of, in some respects, reminds me a bit of Temerov and Charles Johnson from last week, where it's like, yeah, Arman's the better striker, but Bruno throws harder. He's more durable. He hits way harder. It's not impossible for me to imagine Bruno wobbling him multiple times or just having the optics of landing bigger shots and winning rounds. When it comes to actual finishing upside here, I think Bruno has much, much, much more finishing upside than Arman does. And then like even in the grappling, like Bruno Ferreira took down Phil Hawes. He is a decent wrestler. He is decent on top, and Arman's got like 0 takedown defense. So I look at the fight and I'm like, can I make, for this line to be right to me, I feel like you have to make Arman decision like 70%. And given the power dynamic, like I just can't get there. I feel like, yeah, Arman probably is a favorite in the decision. He's probably like 55, 60%, but it's probably 3-1 lean Bruno in finishing equity. If someone's going to dominate around grappling, it's Bruno. If someone's going to have moments, it's Bruno. I don't favor him outright, right? But I feel like it should be pick him at worst to me. So yeah, I understand why the market likes Arman here, but to me, like Abus in his last fight, he had a 6-inch reach advantage. He's faster than Arman. He hits harder, and he had grappling. Arman's getting that same respect with the same reach. not as much speed, not as much power, and no grappling. So yeah, I like Bruno here. I'll probably play him for a bit. What do you think?
So you want to do a shot bet on this? Since I'm probably not going to
Yeah, let's do a shot bet on it. I'll do it.
All right. So
you have to take 1.45 shots though, or 1.25 shots.
I'll do 2
All
shots.
right, fine.
I'll do 2 shots. I don't care. I'm fine with the line being the same as it was in the last fight because, unlike Avis, Arman's much more defensively sound. I think much better cardio, much more reliable volume. In terms of the offensive grappling, I think Arman could have some. We even saw Avis have, a little bit of success. Obviously, he did end up tapping Bruno. I think.
Yeah.
Not that I think that Arman's going to go to by any means, but I think he could if he wanted to. To your point about the moments on the feet, Bruno for sure is definitely the more likely of the two to have it. Obviously, more power of the two, but Bruno's really easy to touch. Stoltz supposed to easily touching him up on the feet before the KO. I think Arman can have his quote unquote moments without actually hurting him on the feet.
I agree. He's a better striker for sure.
Yeah.
But would you disagree though that Bruno's probably got a giant edge in finishing equity in the fight?
Yeah, I'm not super. I guess I'll put it this way: if you told me I guess I would. Here's what I'm how I would work. I don't think the fight's that live to finish. Put it that way.
Okay, all right. I disagree, but we'll see. That's what we have a shot bet for.
Yep.
That's what we have a shot bet for. I like the Bruno side though, but we have more fights here. We have 5 more, and they are fucking bangers. So that's actually a great fight to put leading into the main event. Is the Pereira and Arman? But kicking off the, what'd you say, Rob?
I said I was struggling to get that out there for a minute.
Too many gummies. Kicking off the main card here, we got Jaylen Turner taking on Ignacio Bahamondes. Current price, Jaylen Turner is a small favorite. Oh, no, line flipped again. Ignacio Bahamondes is a small favorite at -115. The comeback on Jaylen Turner, -105. What are your thoughts here, Danny?
So I did already bet Turner at -112, and I am probably going to add, obviously, if he does go dog, it's just probably a 2-unit play in total for me, just because I think early on in this fight, Bahamondes is very live to get cracked. I thought that, put it this way, I played Torres at Pick'em against Bahamondes. How do I not play Turner, who has massive grappling upside, who has, in my opinion, much more critical hit upside on the feet? The big issue for me is really the cardio. And we've kind of seen it come to light the past couple losses with Turner, but to me at Pick'em, this doesn't make a whole ton of sense.
Yeah, I agree. I have 2.5 units on Turner at +101. I think -150 Turner is probably fair here. Even just we start out from a market perspective, right? 2 fights ago or 3 fights ago, Jaylen Turner was -300 against Dan Hooker. 2 fights ago, he was -180 against Bobby Green. Last fight, he was -240 against Renato Moicano. And now he's pick him with Ignacio Bahamondes. And Bahamondes is coming off a very strong performance in his last fight against Manuel Torres. But I'll be honest, even watching that back, I felt like he didn't fight that well.
I feel like Torres, honestly, the finishing sequence just seemed like Torres just kind of kept running into that same shot.
Yeah, the same pull counter. He did it take 2 separate times. Yeah. But Torres was having plenty of success prior to that. And obviously, we've talked for some time about Manuel Torres having giant striking holes. I think everybody who's watched him fight knew that. I did not personally expect Bahamondes to be the guy to capitalize on them, but he did. And, don't get me wrong. I like Bahamondes. Very high volume, very good cardio, very big for the division, very tall, very long. But he's got a handful of issues himself. He's not a great grappler, for one. For two, he's got very, very poor striking defense. I don't think either of these guys are particularly durable, to be honest. We've obviously seen Turner's been KO'd 4 times. Bahamondes has been hurt a bunch of times in a bunch of fights. Turner on the other side, he has similar flaws to Bahamondes in that he can be hittable. And, he's got worse cardio than Bahamondes for sure. But I do think Turner, unlike Torres, is a much more composed striker than Torres is. And by that, he'll go forward like Torres will, but you're not going to see Turner blitzing in with his chin in the air running into that. He's going to sit there. He's going to pick his shots. He's going to throw heavy power shots in combination. I think unlike Torres, he can actually match Bahamondes in the kicking. I think Turner's, teep kick or rear teep kick is going to play probably a pretty big role in this fight. To your point, Danny, I don't think he's going to go for it, but if he wants to, I think he's got a pretty large grappling advantage in this fight over Bahamondes. Baha, pretty easy to take down. I don't. I think he's just going to bang with him, honestly. That's my instinct. I wouldn't mind if he did. My only concern if he went to it would just be like cardio, if he decides he's going to come out and grapple him. But yeah, I feel like Turner has much more KO equity in this fight than Bahamondes does. I think it's interesting because both of them are usually used to being the biggest guys they've fought. But like Turner at least has some experience fighting big guys. He fought Dan Hooker, who's 6'1" with a 75-inch reach. He fought Moicano, who I believe is like 5'11" with a 74-inch reach. Bahamondes has fought no one with a bigger reach than him, or who's his own height. And Turner's got, I think, 2 inches more or 3 inches more of reach than Bahamondes does, which I think is a pretty interesting dynamic here. And given Bahamondes' defense, I think that's not ideal for him. So, yeah, I mean, look, it could be a volatile fight. They're going to strike, right? It's going to be a high-volume striking fight. Both guys can get hit. But I just like Turner's firepower a lot more than Bahamondes. So when you factor in the grappling upside and then, the market behavior here too, where it's like we've had Turner be priced as a huge favorite against much better fighters than Bahamondes is. And now he's picking here. It's almost like the market did a full reset on Turner off the Moicano fight where it doesn't make a ton of sense to me, to be honest. So I'm in on Turner here. I think he should be a favorite. So we'll see what happens. Moving on, we got our boy, Bobby King Green, now known as King Green, but we're calling him Bobby forever. He's taking on Mauricio Ruffy. Current price, Mauricio, big favorite, minus 460. The comeback on Green, plus 360. What are your thoughts, Lags?
Well, I got a feeling you're going to be tempted on the Green side for starters. I'll say this. I'm not
you there, Lex?
a counter striker, and I think he probably finds the chin. And Green's looked, yeah. You hear me?
Yeah. I think you're delayed.
Yeah, I think it was a little delayed there. Yeah, I think Hoofy's a solid counter striker, and I think he finds the chin of Green. I mean, I think we've seen like the slow decline. I mean, Jim Miller was having decent success on him early in that fight.
Yeah, I agree, and I have similar feelings about it. I don't like. I don't. I mean, look, Bobby's 38 years old. I think his durability is obviously declining. I think the knockout he took against Jaylen Turner was savage. Obviously, he's had some more time off since then.
Yeah.
But the thing with Bobby is like Bobby fights with his hands down. If you're a precise striker, he's there to get caught. And like one of the big things that concerns me with this particular fight is he's giving away 4 inches of reach, which isn't great for him because it means he needs to get inside, with those hands down. And obviously Hoopy's a counter striker. So I think he's got a lot of upside to hurt Bobby and or finish him here. Having said that, I mean, I am a little tempted. I don't know if I'll get there. I honestly, betting it live might be better anyway, but I do think Bobby's the better fighter, or the more skilled fighter. He's the much more diverse striker of the two. I think he's the much better defensive striker of the two, frankly. He's probably faster than Ruffy is even now. Like, it's kind of weird because I think Ruffy's going to knock him out at a pretty high clip early in this fight. But I also think if Bobby starts getting his reads, he's going to pick him apart. And if that's if I'm right about that dynamic, the price is awfully big here. I'm trying to avoid spots like betting these old guys like Bobby, going into spots that, we know what the UFC is doing here. Bobby wants to get a paycheck. He's getting sent in here to take on this killer who they're trying to highlight on the main card of a pay-per-view to get knocked out. Now, does that mean it'll happen? Obviously not. I will probably, I don't know if I'll find my way to a Bobby pre-bet, but if he survives the early storm, I'll certainly find my way to a Bobby live bet here. But I do think Bobby's live in this fight. Like, I think he can compete if he doesn't get knocked out. I just feel like he gets hurt early in this fight at a decent clip and or knocked out early in this fight at a decent clip. So I'm if it blew out to like 450, 500, I would take like a half unit poke on Bobby here. But I'm not eager to get involved. And frankly, I think it's very clear that Bobby's showing up for paychecks these days. He said as much before the Patty fight and then came out and took Patty down and got triangle choked. So yeah, that disgusting. It was disgusting is what it was. That was.
And it's hard to not imagine Bobby with like his hands down in this kind of a spot, just absolutely getting cracked.
Yeah, I mean that's my thing. Is like I think Ruffy knocking him out is like close to 50% outcome, 40 to 50%. And so I don't feel like I need to be involved pre here, honestly. Like I really don't. But I will say this: something I think is interesting, and I'm curious your take on it. So the 1.5, like the under is plus 185, and I feel like
I was gonna say I wonder what the 2.5 will be once that comes out. Yeah.
But like the under 1.5, I feel like you're like capturing like most of Ruffy's upside. Like, if you wanted to
or just play him by KO1.
Yeah, but at least you get, if you went like a half unit on the under 1.5 and a half unit on Bobby, it's like you're basically fading a Ruffy finish or decision on the back end, which I mean you could lose, but your risk is low. I don't mind taking a look at it that way. I got to think a little bit more about it, but I think that's kind of an interesting way to take a look at it. Tristan's asking if we're going to do Gutierrez Castaneda. I do not think we are going to. Neither of us taped it since it just got announced. So, I mean, I could give my thoughts, but I don't really have anything firm in my head at the moment. So, because I mean, it is a pretty interesting fight, honestly. So, moving on though, we got the feature bout of the evening. We got Amanda Lemos. She's taken on the hottest prospect in the division, Yasmin Lucindo. Current price, Lucindo minus 137. Minus 145. Come back on Lemos, plus 125. Any thoughts here, Lag? Do you think Lemos is live?
Man, talk about a Spider-Man mean pick for sure, John. I mean, this is like it to a T. But just you have the one who's 23 and one who's 37. And one, in my opinion, who has a little bit more offensive grappling upside. And I think that's really the only thing that's holding me back on like the Lemos side. Like, I mean, if they just stand and strike, it's hard to not think that, it's going to be pretty close where I think Lemos probably has a power edge. I mean, I don't think – I think it's probably low volume in that sense too. But her defensive grappling's just not great. And I think Lucindo can take advantage of that.
I thought I was going to bet Lemos for sure. Looked at dude. There's something. There's something about her. I can't quite put my finger on what it is. It just rubs me the wrong way with Amanda Lemos and how she fights. It's almost like, she's dangerous, right?
It's high volatility, really. That's all it is.
Yeah, and it's like she's very dangerous. She's got a very powerful right hand. She's got nasty calf kicks. Obviously, we just saw Yasmin Lucindo have the toughest fight of her career. Frankly, I thought she lost that fight, but it's like she's not switched on all the time. It's very weird. Like even rewatching the Dern fight, I bet Dern there. You could make a real argument she lost to Dern, and she had no business. That fight had no business being competitive. She had Dern on one leg a minute into that fight, and then somehow gives up a blast double in the middle of the octagon, like 2.5 minutes in. I just feel like she's not always all there. And on top of that, she's 37. She's taken on a woman in Yasmin who just had her worst performance of her career in a big step up. But I don't think this is a meaningful step up from Marina for Yasmin, to be honest. No. And even though, Lemos beat up Marina a bit, I think Marina, in a lot of respects, is a trickier fighter than Lemos is. She's got a very nasty clinch game, a lot of really nasty teep kicks. Lemos' game is pretty linear. She wants to calf kick you, and she wants to take your head off with the right. And that's kind of it. And Lucindo, I will say this. I was pretty impressed with her head movement against Marina. Marina didn't mount, outside of the shot that dropped her, she didn't mount a ton of effective offense in that fight. And if she's not mounting a bunch of effective offense, I have a hard time imagining Lemos does. Like Lemos could have her moments here. She could hurt her, but only one of them has big grappling upside, to your point. There's a 15-year age gap. Lucindo is obviously improving. Lemos is obviously not. Again, it's like we both know what the UFC wants to happen here. They're putting their 22-year-old star here with a 37-year-old old guard who's coming off a main event loss. I don't know. I mean, I think it's Lemos your pass just on, the experience, level of competition, power. But I have no interest, really. I think Lucindo is going to win this fight. I think it's going to be competitive. But I like Lucindo's pace more. I like her toughness more. I like her cardio a lot more. And obviously she's got the grappling upside here. So
John,
yeah.
you want to make another shot bet on this fight? Not on the fight specific, but I'm going to make a call out on this. Not Rogan specifically, because I'm not going to say he's on the commentary, but we'll say one of the commentary. They call out and say Lucindo is a new age Lemos or something along the lines of that, or a new. They say that on the broadcast. You owe me a shot.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'm down with that. I feel like I'm taking it at the plus 400 here for minus 110, but yeah, yes, dude, 2 Brazilians and they got like similar haircuts, kind of. She's gonna come out blonde just to fuck me, just to firmly fuck me here. Yeah. But okay. Yeah, I'm fine with it. That's fun. That would be fun. Yeah, I like Lucindo. I think she's gonna win this fight. I shouldn't say I like her at the price, but I do think she's gonna win. Moving on, though, we got Justin Gaethje taking on Rafael Fiziev. Current price, Fiziev minus 140. Current comeback on Gaethje plus 120. I bet Fiziev to win 2.5 units at about minus 130 earlier or last night, I guess right before I went to bed. Yeah, I know Fiziev's coming off an injury, but the truth is, in modern medicine, like ACL injuries don't generally cause that many issues long term. Plus, that injury happened like a year and a half ago. From what I can see on Instagram, he's been in the gym for the last 40 weeks or so. So he looks fine to me. And I also read that he was in camp to fight at UFC Saudi Arabia a few weeks back. And they were trying to book for him, didn't come to fruition. So I'm not really worried about that. He's taking on Gaethje, who's obviously coming off a brutal knockout against Max Holloway at UFC 300. But I mean, that was a year ago too. So again, not that big a deal. What I'll say is this, from a market standpoint, Fiziev was minus 255 the first time this fight happened. Probably was too wide, but I don't know, man. Like I felt like Fiziev looked like a pretty firm favorite in that fight. I know Gaethje won. I'm not saying he like didn't deserve it. I thought Fiziev won personally, but it was a competitive scrap. But in watching it back, the biggest thing that stood out to me was speed. You know, the speed difference between these two is just gigantic. You know, the body kicks. Gaethje wasn't picking up on it all. He obviously got wobbled in that fight pretty badly in round 2. Gaethje's boxing kind of won him the fight. His jab pretty much won him the fight in round 3 of that fight. But even if they ran that back the next day, I would have made Fiziev like minus 150 to minus 185, to be honest. Looking at it now, it's like we have 2 years removed. Fiziev's 31. I mean, he's at Tiger Muay Thai. He's one of the coaches there. Great doctors. He's obviously in his physical prime. Gaethje now 36. He's coming off another pretty vicious knockout. You know, he looked like, I thought he was declining a couple years ago when he went to a very close decision with Michael Chandler. I think it's pretty safe assumption to assume he has probably declined at least somewhat since their first fight 2 years ago. And so like with that dynamic, I would have made it minus 150 to 185 Fiziev the day after their first fight. And now I'm like 2 more years away from Gaethje, another KO. I feel like Fiziev should be up around minus 190, minus 200 here. I just think, look, will it shock me if Gaethje has a similar fight and wins a close decision? Not really, but I kind of think that's most of his upside here. Fiziev's the better technical striker. He's the much faster fighter. He's a much better athlete. I actually think he's got sneaky grappling upside here. I'm going to look like an idiot if he doesn't shoot at all, because he never does. But like, I feel like a huge price on like Fiziev sub would be pretty fun. But he definitely can. Like all the TMT guys can, you know, like if he decides he wants to win the fight. Yeah. But I just think Fiziev's the better fighter by a fair amount. And I think his career trajectory is in a different place than Gaethje's. Gaethje's clearly kind of on the way out the door here. Still fighting at a high level, but I didn't think he looked particularly good against Holloway at all in that fight, even leading up to the knockout. He's getting older. He's taken a ton of damage. And yeah, I mean, Fiziev's just a much more explosive athlete in the middle of his prime, who's also a better technical striker than Gaethje was at any point in his career. To me, Fiziev should be a bit wider of a favorite here. I like him a fair amount. What are your thoughts, Lex?
I also play him at minus 145 to win 1.5 units. And I guess the only thing I'll add on to that is, I mean, we talked about this a little bit before. I think now with like the additional damage that Gaethje's now taken, it's hard to not to say that Fiziev has both a power and a durability edge in this matchup.
His durability looked great in their first fight. He was taking the shots, no problem. To be honest, if he didn't get it,
I was gonna say he's getting mostly busted up by the jab.
Yeah, the jab won the fight for Gaethje. If he didn't get the cut on his left eye, he probably would have won the decision unanimously. Like that literally probably swung the fight. And maybe that happens again. He could lose a close decision, but I guess my view is I think a lot of Gaethje's equity is tied to winning a close decision, whereas I could see Fiziev winning a wide decision, and I think he's got more finishing equity here. So that's kind of my view.
I think it's just coming back on the back end, really taking over.
But I don't think Gaethje's got great cardio either, and I don't think he's going to be able to get away with like landing the jab 40 straight times again in this fight like he did the first time. Maybe I'll be wrong. We'll see. But I like him. But moving on, we got the main event. It's a big one. Legs, I'm gonna start with you because you dropped a nice little catchphrase earlier for this fight.
Yeah.
We got Alex Pereira. He's taking on Magomed Ankalaev. Current price: Alex Pereira -115. The comeback on Ankalaev -105. What are your thoughts?
Well, John, you know what the UFC is trying to do here, right? I mean, this is the month of Chamadan. So clearly, you know what they're trying to do. They're trying to push the Chama, push the aura of their champion, Alex Pereira. But no, in all seriousness, though, I don't know if I'm going to get to a bet here unless he goes dog. But I like the Pereira side personally. I think the leg kicks are going to be massive for him. Obviously, we saw in the Jan fight give Ankalaev huge fits, and that's really only when we saw him go to that wrestling upside. I mean, which was kind of a huge shocker to me. And that was really his biggest step up in competition to date. Like, you go through his whole resume, it's like Johnny Walker, Rakic, Logie Mbola, Kudalaba. Not a lot of great guys.
Jan.
Krylov's all right.
Jan was the champion. We all know who won that fight.
Oh, I know. And that was an elevation. and again, he didn't employ that wrestling until that back end of the fight when his calf was absolutely destroyed. But it's tough to click Pereira at.
You there, Legs?
You know, end up going to it because.
Hold on, Legs, you're cutting out a bit.
Izzy had 6 on him. A ton of guys who were able to have success on Pereira, who it's like unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to bet Ankalaev here. I haven't decided how much I'm going to bet him for. I look at this fight. What was that?
I said you want to do another shot bet here, and I understand why somebody would bet Ankalaev because of that wrestling upside. I get it totally.
Yeah, I am down to do a shot bet here. It's not just so. I mean, the wrestling. Don't get me wrong, is obviously a big factor here. I feel as if the entire market is looking at this as if it's like Ank's wrestling versus Pereira striking. And my view is Ankalaev's an elite striker. Like, he's a really, really good striker. And everybody's acting as if like he's like drawing dead on the feet. Like, the fucking entire market was betting Jamal Hill to beat Alex Pereira and betting Yuri to beat Alex Pereira. And we're acting like Ankalaev can't strike with him? Like, that, to me, that seems kind of crazy. Like, my view is like the absolute max price Pereira can be on the feet here is like -185-ish. Because they're both fast. And, I mean, if you actually look at the numbers, Ank's got way, way, way better head strike defense historically. Pereira's got way, way better head strike accuracy because obviously Pereira likes to get in the pocket, throw power shots. But I feel like if Pereira tries to get in the pocket with Ankalaev on the feet, I mean, he's running the risk of getting knocked out himself. You know, these guys have the same knockdown rates for their careers. They have the same having been knockdown rate at 0.3% for their careers. Ankalaev's obviously a southpaw who's very, very fast himself. So, like, I don't think Pereira's upside is gigantic on the feet here, personally. Even if Ankalaev does go, you know, the 60 IQ game plan here and decide to bang with him. But, like, when you think about the wrestling, look, in taping Ankalaev, look, this isn't Khabib, it's not Islam. He's nowhere near the level of those guys as a wrestler. But he is a quality wrestler. And like, it's funny because after I taped Ank, I'm like, man, his wrestling is not as good as I thought it was. But then taping Pereira, I'm like, yeah, his defensive wrestling is worse than I remembered it being. The guy is he is just an awful defensive wrestler. Like, the single leg Jiri dumped him with was pathetic. The takedowns that Jan hit against him were pathetic. And this is he's about to be 38 years old. Like, I don't think the improvements in the wrestling are coming. I really don't. And, you know, I know Ank's had some, you know, sweaty moments here and there, but I go back and look at the way he cage wrestled Nikita Krylov, and I'm like, if he gets Pereira on the fence here, Pereira's not going to be able to stall the way he did against Jiri. He's just going to outside reap him and put him right on his back. And where Ankalaev is very, very, very good is on top. Like, the guy's got an elite top game. He throws nasty ground and pound. I don't really see Pereira getting up if he gets taken down. Now, the question with Ankalaev, as always, is he going to wait to shoot until he's hurt, or will he just get KO'd before he ever attempts a takedown? Maybe. It could happen. But, like, I'm thinking about the fight, and if, like, one of these guys was to look like a gigantic favorite, it's going to be Magomed Ankalaev. You know, like, Magomed Ankalaev, there are permutations of this fight where we're all like, wow, that was the most obvious bet of the year. The fucking Dagestani grappler just mauled the fish from Brazil who kickboxed his entire career. You know, there's like no, in any scenario, like, they're not going to strike and Pereira just clowns him for 25 minutes. This isn't Khalil Roundtree, you know, who, by the way, won multiple rounds against Alex Pereira on the feet. So I guess my view is Ankalaev has almost all of the giant favorite upside, and Pereira's upside is like minus 185 maybe, if Ankalaev just decides he's going to bang with him. So yeah, I don't think it makes much sense. I mean, we're talking about probabilities here. I don't think it makes much sense for Ankalaev to not be lined, you know, at least minus 150. And I agree, we should build in a lot of room for Ankalaev not fighting to his strength and getting himself knocked out here. That could certainly happen.
And I guess that's really the big thing for me. Like, I guess it's more of a show me spot in terms of the wrestling at, like, the higher level in a 5-round fight, because to me, like, again, what is his best win?
I mean, Khalil did win the first 2 rounds unanimously against Alex, I'm pretty sure. Am I wrong about that? I'm almost positive.
No, at least run one. At least 1-1.
I thought it was 2-0, but I could be wrong. It's possible. No, but I'm saying, like, is it... Dixon said I'm speaking like everybody knows I am not a Dagestan guy, but I am putting my chips on Dagestan here. You know, I mean, but the thing is, Lax, though, couldn't you imagine Ank just stiffing Pereira? Like, would that be really shocking?
No.
That's what I'm saying, you know? Well, my apologies if it was 1-1. I thought it was 2-0, but I could obviously be wrong. But yeah, I mean, that's my point. Like, there's no scenario here where a lot of grappling happens and it's good for Alex Pereira. There are scenarios where Ank is competitive standing and or knocks out Pereira on the feet. So yeah, I mean, I'm going to be on Alex here. I think.
Yeah, you're going to be on Alex?
Or not? No, I'm not. I'm definitely not going to be on Alex. I am going to be on Ank here. I feel like this is going to be one of those. I mean, maybe I'll look at. I know. I'm not even going to say it. I'm not going to put it into the world. I'm not going to jinx it.
Just say it.
I'm not going to say what I was going to say. No, not going to do it. Not going to do it. All I'm saying is there are spots at times like Floyd Mayweather against Conor McGregor, Anthony Joshua against Francis Ngannou, Jake Paul against Mike Tyson, where one side is so glaringly obvious and the other side's got so much hype, people refuse to, you know, actually look at, you know, what's actually happening here. Is this that? Might be. But I'm going to be on Ank here, for sure. That's my take. Any rebuttal?
No. I think we're good. Any take on I was just looking at any take on the total? So the GTD's plus.
I like under, man. I don't understand 2.5 under plus 130. Like.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, do you disagree?
No, I'm looking at it right now on FanDuel. Under 4.5 rounds, they have minus 128.
That's fucking crazy to me. I do not think this is going the distance. Yeah. I think there's no way.
FanDuel is one of the only ones out there right now with the under 4.5, and then they have, again, one of the only ones out there with the GTD market too.
Dude, that's weird. They have ends inside the distance minus 180, but under 4.5,
128. Minus 128. Yeah.
That's fucking nuts. I mean, I guess it could go. If it goes the distance, I feel like Ank is going to win this fight. I mean, that seems like pretty likely to me. But I just feel like if Ank is grappling him, he's probably going to finish on top. And I do think someone's getting put down if they strike. It's maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we're looking at this the complete wrong way. But to me, I sort of think someone's going to finish this fight.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, guys, that'll do it for tonight. So we got a big card this week, UFC 313. We'll be back next week, 7 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to be breaking down a banger. We got Roman the Leeds, Marvin Vittori 2. Absolutely epic rematch. Get jacked for it. Co-headlined by Chidi Njokuani and Zaleski dos Santos. But guys, thanks for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. If you like the show, drop a like, subscribe. I'm going to have Lags do a contest for everybody. We'll come up with it this week. He'll tweet it out. We'll give some money away next week if someone gets their parlay right. We'll probably run the same one we've been running. But guys, as usual, follow me on Twitter at MMA Fox, Lags at Danny_Lags. Share it, share the show, like, subscribe. And if you guys want to talk fights, anything, feel free to hit us up. And we will put your notifications on for the Club and Sub podcast on Twitter. We will be doing a contest to win some free money this week. But yeah, guys, good luck on your bets this weekend or next weekend. And God bless. Peace.